You're looking good, and it feels good to be with you today. I'm Kendall Brian Hunter, and this is News with the Eye of Faith. We're discussing the Confusocracy today. Well, there's been another assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and all I got to say is, are you still going to keep quiet? If you keep quiet, you feel like you're worthy of this country. Another thing to think about that when you think about people trying to assassinate political leaders. Inasmuch as ye have done it unto least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me. I was going to begin this on a rampage, a little bit like Glenn Beck did, but the Doctrine and Covenants says, he that speaketh, whose spirit is contrite, whose language is meek and edifieth, the same is of God, if you obey my ordinances. So no shouting, no ranting, no raving. Sometimes I have to dial things back. You know how to create mental pictures. That's part of persuasion. And contrite, meek, and edify, the same as of God. Assassination attempts. The left has a culture of death. Kamala Harris is running on reproductive freedom. That's a code word for standing on the skulls of aborted fetuses. They kill the young, abortion. They kill the old, euthanasia. And now they're trying to kill their enemies. You remember the softball game where there's an assassination attempt, or Rand Paul, and you look at it's Republican presidents, Lincoln, Garfield, McKinley, John F. Kennedy, the four, and then you have Teddy Roosevelt, Trump, Reagan. You're more likely to be assassinated if you're a Republican. I don't understand the correlation. It's not causation, but it's there. We need to call out the social media celebrities. Stephen King. Now, they don't advocate it, but they don't speak out against it, and they sort of give a side statement, implying that he deserved it. Stephen King, he has a book called 11/22/63, the date Kennedy was assassinated, and the Kennedy assassination is referred to in his book, The Dead Zone. J. Michael Straczynski, he's a very good man. I admire his work. But when you're not forcibly speaking out assassinations, and we watch Babylon 5, where the planetary galactic vice president kills the president to ascend to the presidency, a political assassination in your creative work, there's sort of a dichotomy. Mark Hamil calling supporters of Trump MAGA or maggots. Yeah, you wear this, you go force yourself is what Mark Hamill thinks about you. Admire his work, and we're not going to do any Luke Skywalker jokes. So, Luke Skywalker, cut my hand off. Robert Picardo, who plays a holographic doctor on Star Trek Voyager, they've spoken out. Of course, the grandmother, the fairy godmother of it is, remember this picture from Kathy Griffen? This doesn't incite violence. You remember the Secret Service came after she posted that, okay? Yeah, we're calling you on things left. So, the left, you're the party of John F. Kennedy, and you're not forcibly speaking out against these two assassinations. What changed about your party? Speaking out against assassinations is not to endorse Trump, it's to endorse civil society. It's to endorse humanity. Donald Trump's a neighbor you're supposed to love, then forgive. What's the Book of Mormon pattern for assassinations? We're studying it this year at Come Follow Me. 3 disputed elections, and then we hit the Book of Helaman, assassinations. What's the Book of Mormon pattern? And are you applying it, or are you just falling in with your political party's talking points? Russell M. Nelson posted a video. We don't know what he's going to say in General Conference. I hope he addresses it. Like I said, to speak out against assassinations is not to endorse Trump and not to endorse anything except your love of country. He talks about contention. Contention is a choice. Christ said to love your enemies. We're supposed to pray for charity. Lucifer is the common enemy. We're supposed to forgive people. Lucifer is the common enemy, not Trump, not Harris, not Biden. Speaking of which, Biden is still president, and that's why I use this term confusocracy. You're getting confused. Trump's not president, Harris is not president, Biden is president, and we're just getting lost in the shuffle that he's still president with his finger on the button, and he's not running because of his mental acuity issues. So he's fine enough to still be president, but not to run as president again. That's like, you're smart enough to get hired, but we're not going to promote you. Peter Principle again. Well, getting on more things off of the assassination, and never forget when blood gets shed. His blood was shed. Donald Trump was. Jana Reeves has this article in the Salt Lake Trib, and it's about the 100th birthday of President Nelson and changes in the church since he's become president. Now, here's a list of top changes. The number one was moving towards a 2-hour church meeting schedule. I kind of like that. And emphasizing home-based come follow me gospel study. Sometimes it depends upon the ward you live in, the people who show up. Sometimes these discussions are good. Sometimes it's just people making speeches and repeating things I heard podcasters say. So I endorse that. That's more of a temperament thing on my thing. I'm not a joiner. It took a lot of prodding for me to get this direction, the slow incremental process. So 1, 2-hour church. 3, come follow me at home. 3 was using the full name of the church, which is a revelation. And it was funny, growing up, we always had this double standard. You'd read things in the Doctrine and Covenants and then swivel our head and repeat saying, oh yeah, it's okay. And we're being consistent now. The name of the church is a revelation, just like the sacrament prayers. Allowing missionaries to call home weekly. That's kind of an issue, interesting, because that's tied with perpetual childhood. Paul said, I spoke as a child and I put away childish things. It's time to grow up and to cut the apron strings, and that's prolonging adolescence. At some point, you get a job, you get a 401k, you get out of debt, you set up a stock portfolio, you buy government bonds. Part of being an adult. Being adults is something to embrace, not to fear or to prolong. Allowing parents to accompany youth into bishops' interviews. This is interesting because legally, now this is not from the point of view of law. Now, I'm not a lawyer. My degree is in a Bachelor of Arts in History, and I minored in political science, but I've had to study law associated with my degree and just as personal studies. You have two privileged relations. You have attorney-client privilege, you have medical privilege, you have parental privilege, you have spousal privilege, then you have clergy privilege. And so clergy privilege versus parental privilege. And what the church is saying is that parental privilege runs out over ecclesiastical privilege. But then again, you have the other issue. One, why don't you trust the bishop? The other thing, too, is are you prolonging adolescence, prolonging childhood, where it's you're not allowing people to grow up. You're trying to a bunch of helicopter parents raising snowflakes. So removing the 1-year waiting period between civil weddings and temple sealings, that was clearly policy, and that I've defended the old way. It's a priority, but on the other hand, it's just another country. Sometimes you have to get a civil marriage before you get a temple sealing. And if it's policy, we can change it. It's like with the missionary ages. You can change those just because culture has changed. It's my 1 year or 2 semesters of college before my mission, of course, were helpful. But getting out of high school, mission, then college, it makes a little bit more sense now in this situation. I had a friend of mine who went to a close by college, and after that he went to a college on the East Coast. I asked him about that. He said, he just wanted to cut the apron strings. I thought, that was funny. At age 19, I was living in Portugal, foreign country, and another language. Allowing women and youth to serve as witnesses for baptisms. That's interesting because it's not in the scripture, it's not doctrine, it's policy, and you're kind of curious how these policies started. Ending the relationship with the Boy Scouts of America. That's a sensitive issue. You think about that because you just understand there's 3rd Nephi again. When you read 3rd Nephi, Christ doesn't say, okay, we need to set up camping trips and Boy Scout outings. Doesn't talk about activities in 3rd Nephi. It talks a whole lot about Isaiah, and and you understand the accusations of anti-patriotism need to have something to raise the youth as we're getting more urbanized. So we adopted it. So there's some benefits, there's some negatives. You can get exalted without earning an Eagle Scout. Now, I am an Eagle Scout myself. Both my brothers are. My father is an honorary Eagle Scout. Older brother and father are wood badge trained. I'm Order of the Arrow. I was at the ordeal level, the first level. So we were involved with it, but it's just not the gospel. I went on more camping trips than temple trips, even though I lived 15 minutes away from the Oakland Temple. And that's a problem. Changing temple rituals to expand the role of Eve and give greater equality to woman. At one of the, I think it's 4 times the endowment's been updated, and I endorse the changes with the contacting with COVID-19. I work at a hospital, and you have a bunch of elderly people. It's hands. Hands is what is the number one transmitter of disease, and that touching can get someone sick. But I'm just not going to comment on it or comment on people's interpretations of what's going on. So, sorry, I'm going to err on the side of quiet. 10, calling the first Asian American, first Brazilian as apostles. That's interesting because there's neither bond, free, nor Greek, and that's an emotional attachment to people. If something is true, it doesn't matter where you have an American or a Brazilian says it. And like I said, I served my mission in Portugal. My second mission president was Brazilian. Posso falar português. Posso falar na maneira de Brasil. Também. So nothing against Brazilian, but it's just, that's it. I am kind of curious why so many people from the San Francisco Bay Area. Elder Cook from San Francisco, David A. Bednar from San Leandro, and then Elder Gong from Redwood City. I think that's interesting. So that's the top 10. What's missing is his talk on the Sabbath, which was a pre-prophet one, getting the purchase of the Kirtland Temple and the Joseph Smith translation manuscript. I think that's absolutely crucial. In fact, given a choice, I'd take the Joseph Smith manuscripts over the Kirtland Temple. But we got both, so I'm not complaining. Finishing the Joseph Smith paper, updating and preach my gospel. I'm reading that, and it's really an improved way of teaching stuff. I'm curious. I like talking with missionaries to see how they do things. So, preach my gospel. This thing with Passion Week, Holy Week, Good Friday, Palm Sunday, that sort of came and went. They talked about it, and then this year, they didn't mention it. So, see what happens with that. So on President Nelson, Ensign College, President Bruce K. Cush, I don't know how you say his name is Cush or Cush, I guess that's the best way. And he talked about the title of President Nelson's talk. Now, this is interesting. President Nelson's talk, Think Celestial. The answer is always Jesus Christ. Peacemakers needed. Focus on the temple. Overcome the world and find rest. This power to spiritual momentum. Make time for the Lord. Let God prevail. Hear Him. Opening the heavens for help. And choices for eternity. Yeah, pay attention. We understand how actuary tables work, but President Nelson definitely has led his mark on the church and on church history. Now, the Deseret News has been having these 2 articles about caffeine, and the first one, which is a midweek one from this week, and I said, what's this about? We've gone from the caffeine being the devil's brew to soft drinks that shall remain nameless, to it being sold at BYU and BYU Idaho. But as I read the article, there is bona fide medical reasons. Some people with headaches. Now, I actually use caffeine. I have asthma, and sometimes when my lungs get irritated, especially when we have forest fires here, I take caffeine tablets, and what that does is it opens up my lungs so I can breathe again. If not, it'd take about 2 weeks for me to recover, but the caffeine helps. But I don't take it recreationally. I'm not one of these person who needs a physical jolt. That's an addictive thing. Section 89, verse 8, talks about tobacco can be used with judgment and skill. That's tobacco. The same thing can be applied to, caffeine and other substance. And this weekend, when they had an article about sports figures doing caffeine, which I think is kind of interesting, because isn't that a performance-enhancing substance that you're getting your energy riled up? And what's the long-term consequences? Watch this documentary called NFL Not for Luke, about Luke Staley, the BYU football player, and what's happened to his body. So I'm kind of curious about why this focus on caffeine all of a sudden. Like I said, I'm not a person about needing stimulants, so So where is that? So, oh, that was a repeat. So, sorry, my nose is a little itchy. Now, speaking about caffeine, here's a life hack. When someone offers you a word of wisdom non-compliant substance, let me pause for a second. So I'm at the life hack section. When someone offers you something that's against the word of wisdom, don't take it. Say, thank you, but I wouldn't be able to drink it for my religious reasons. Then add this: I appreciate your intent. Because unless a person is trying to seduce you, it's an honest mistake. It's like accidentally offering a Jew a ham sandwich or a cheeseburger. Just say, oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. And the good person say, you know, I understand you didn't mean evil, and I appreciate your intent. That'll help diffuse the situation and keep a positive energy and a positive relationship. So I want to conclude with this. We're on talking about President Nelson. Hey, guess what? Isn't conference coming up? What's your calendar saying? How do you prepare for conference? Is your conference preparation involved making sweet roll recipes? Or is it something spiritual? So pattern for unity in this month's Liahona, or next month's in October. President Nelson says, and he talks about 4th Nephi. This is what he says. This is the pattern. Conversion, 2, 1, 2, covenants, 3, fairness, equality, and helping the poor, 4, obedience, 5, meeting together, 6, love, 7, divine identity. Each of us is a child of God, a child of the covenants, and a disciple of Jesus Christ. And that's a 7 pattern. Now, you remember a couple of years ago, Elder D. Todd Christofferson talked about sustainable societies, and the first topic he mentioned, United Nations program, which I thought was kind of funny. You know, you're supposed to preach the gospel and not talk about social issues. Well, some people are allowed to, some people aren't. Mr. Taft Benson got kind of wrapped on the knuckles if you read his biography. But, yeah, it's interesting because the United Nations has 17 points, and President Nelson has 7. And this also involves the priesthood and, of course, Christ's atonement. Yeah, so that'd be interesting. Print out the 17, compare and contrast. Elder Christofferson was talking about Zion, and this is the same thing. These 7 steps to Zion. You know, if you just sit there in your ward council or in your presidency meetings and make one of these 7 items your agenda, and you're persistent with it and doing it with real intent and doing it in the right way, you would establish Zion quite easily. Hopefully we don't ignore this, but we pay attention to the prophet and we do the long-term work. And instead of following United Nations ideas or worldly ideas, we follow prophets and read Christ's pattern in the scriptures. In fact, following Zion, that can prevent further assassinations. And establishing Zion prepares us for the coming of Christ. And that is News with the Eyes of Faith.